Hi there. In this video I'm going to do an audio upgrade that I was waiting to do since I installed the subwoofer in the back of this car. And that is to upgrade the front dash speakers, which are two tweeters. I have the audio sound system, not the is it Bang & Olufsen on this car? I think it's Bang & Olufsen, and it's not a great system, even that one. Anyway, I have the Audi sound system, which has three in the front, and that's about it. The sub in the back, and the speakers in the doors. Anyway, these things, this one I added, but these things, they don't sound good. So the car, after the upgrade of the subwoofer, has good bass. That is perfect now. Mids are highs quite crappy. So I'm trying to help the mids and the highs by using some really nice speakers from Dayton Audio that they were kind enough to send from Parts Express. Here is the info, and I will put a link in the description to buy these little speakers. They are awesome, and a lot of people had really good results when upgrading the dash speakers in the A4 B8 with these little things. So let me get the protection out. These are aluminum cone speakers, aluminum face plug, really compliant. They move a lot, and as you can see, huge magnet on them and quite a big voice coil for such a small speaker. Not sure if you can see, it has a big diameter. Anyway, let's get this started and install these awesome little speakers and see what we get. And yes, you kind of need one of these kits. Also, a link will be in the description of the video to get one of these. It will be really helpful when you are working on the car. And yeah, forgot to add, at the end of the video I will attempt, not sure if you can hear a difference through my recording audio, I will try to put a bit of the same music played with the current speakers, current dash tweeters, and the new ones that I put in. And hopefully you can hear this difference, but let me try and explain what I hear myself. I think these are actually overpowered at this point, and they get way more frequencies through them than they are able to handle. I think they get a lot of mids, and when you crank up the volume, those mids somehow destroy the highs, because the speaker is not able to move enough like this for the mids and produce good highs at the same time. So they're just not cutting it. Anyway, so let's get this thing out first, because I cut it out a few times, so I know how to handle it. Okay, so for me it's quite simple at this point, because I had this thing taken off a few times, so it comes off easily. I will show you. I actually rounded the edges of the clips so they don't clip nearly as good as they did the first time. If it's the first time you will take this out, you have a high chance of breaking most of the clips on this side. And yeah, I also broke mine, but I will also show you how I fixed them. So yeah, if you are unsure, you can fix them yourself. Maybe get a new part of this type. It shouldn't be too expensive, but I managed to fix mine without getting a new part. So what you need to do, a prying tool like this, and go slowly around with it. I think there is a clip right there in the middle, and all the way around. But again, for you this will be much harder to do compared to what I'm doing here. Again, I rounded the edges of the clips so they come out way easier, and honestly I think they should be like this from the factory, because these things don't come out by themselves for no good reason. Anyway, that's what I will do also on the other side, and let me get it out. Let me show how bad this designing is. Even though I optimized them to get out as easy as possible, I still managed to break one of them once again. So let me actually try and show you how to fix them once they are broken. You glue them in place with a bit of super glue, and then on top of that you put a little bit of cloth like you see here, and then super glue it. So it will become something like fiberglass, rough approximation. You could even put something like this with epoxy and probably it will not be this brittle. But anyway, as an idea, also round the edges of these things as much as possible. But again, that one broke, so I will need to fix it for the 100th time probably. Anyway, and yeah, as you can see, this is the position of this thing. Normally sits like this, so this is the position of the clips if it helps you get them out of there. But honestly, maybe do this on a really hot day, so they might be a bit more less brittle, but this is really bad plastic, so anyway, let's continue. Okay, so the first speaker is out. I didn't show you how I take it out because I didn't have it there, so I used some random Torx screws that probably are not identical to yours. I will show you for the tweeters, obviously. Anyway, so for this was not stock for me, so anything that I would show you would not matter. For example, this connector that I added, it's not stock, it's a preset switch from a PC that, weirdly enough, goes perfectly in those pins in there. Anyway, let's check it out compared to this 3-inch speaker. They are quite similar. Yes, obviously this is bigger in diameter, but that doesn't mean much. On height, if we are looking, let me try and somehow hold them. Not enough hands, only two. What can I say? So I'm trying to hold them at the same level. As you can see, the original one, it's even a bit higher than the Dayton Audio RS75-4 ohm in this case. But this has a larger diameter magnet. This is neodymium, but it's tiny and actually honestly quite weak. Anyway, so let's see how this fits in here. It might not be a perfect fit, as you can see. Actually, it's not allowed to go as deep as it should. And why that is happening? Because we have this weird shape which is prepared for the factory speaker. But we can make a huge spacer. As you can see, this thing on height is allowed to go even higher, up until here, before hitting on anything. So for us that is awesome. We don't need to go nearly as high as that. We can actually measure the distance that is required between it and the place that it mounts to, and make a spacer just a tiny bit higher so it doesn't hit on the bottom of this hole. So let me measure the distance and start making the spacer. Okay, so what we need to do now is adapt from this particular shape, which has only 2 screws at these ends, to this one. To do that, I'm using 1 centimeter thick plywood. That would make sure that this thing is positioned at the right height and it's not hitting anything. And simply take the old speaker, put it in here, mark around it. We don't mark the holes yet, or you could actually mark them, doesn't really matter. And cut this. Obviously in the center we need to cut a hole so this thing drops in that particular hole, and that should be all good. Maybe I will actually cut the hole first, so let me mark the center of this. Decided to actually mark also the holes and the center for this thing, and I will cut it with this, but let me just check its diameter. I only made sure it's good for that, but I don't know what's the diameter, so be back. So this is 55 millimeter in diameter, and it will work for all three of these speakers that we will put in the dash. Okay, hole is cut. As you can see, I filed down this edge just so these two can fit in here properly. Let's center this thing a bit, and now I simply need 4 really narrow screws so I don't break this board. Drill those holes and cut the exterior edge. Drilled the two 4 millimeter diameter holes. Well, let's just say this will look really bad. It will be functional, but will look really bad because I'm at my parents' place and the tools here are limited. He doesn't have blades for cutting I don't know, curves in wood, so yeah, I don't even want to go there. I'm using what I have. It will look quite bad. It's not going to be seen from the outside, obviously, but come on, camera, focus. What are you doing? But it's annoying for me to do something like this. Anyway, it is what it is. Okay, it seems 1 centimeter thick plywood might actually be too thick. So 6 millimeter plywood probably is right where it should be. Hopefully I can remove 2 of these layers in here so I don't need to cut this whole thing once again. And obviously this needs to be painted. You need to paint it black. You have chances of it showing up through holes when it's sun directly on it. Okay, repeat, 1 centimeter, that is 10 millimeter thick plywood. Too much for this thing. 6 millimeter should be perfect. Okay, now it's perfect. As you can see, it's quite low, and the plywood has now about 7 millimeters in thickness or something like that. And yeah, put these things in this side because not sure if you can see, here we have a hole, so they have enough room to go in there. And what I think I will do, actually tighten this in place with the holes, and then I will come with this thing, solder the wires. You can get connectors in this shape, but I'm going to solder the wires. Make sure you keep the correct polarity. For this one, I know that I used red for positive. We will see for the factory ones. I'm not sure what they used. And yeah, I will keep the right polarity, drop it in there, put some tiny screws, and should be good to go. And this stupid phone is continuing to focus whenever I move something in front of it, which is completely idiotic. Decided to actually do something else. Put everything in place, put these 2 screws just a tiny bit in, and now I'm going to actually mark where the holes need to be in the plywood, and I will put the screws directly in the plywood before and then solder and then put these 2 in. Better like that. We have the holes drilled. These are the screws that I will use. Perfect length, so they will not get out of this. They are exactly this thickness plus the speaker. Yes, this looks really ugly, but it will do the job. This is ready to go in. Plywood is black, screws are black, marker. And yeah, everything looks okay. Forgot to tell you, for the US based part of you, there is someone that actually sells these adapters online. I will link also the forum where he sells them in the description of this video, and there is someone else that has 3D files of them that can be 3D printed, so that is another way. But I don't know, that's too easy, isn't it? This is more complicated, harder to do, looks worse, so obviously I took this option. To take these things out, use as many of these tools as you possibly can, get them in there and don't lift too much on one side. Just put them in there one by one and lift just a tiny bit, and it will actually pop out quite nicely compared to this one. But yeah, I don't think we are out of the woods yet. Let's see about the other sides, or actually, no, we still have that end, which I'm not exactly sure how it's attached. Okay, so the ones at the end are a bit different. They are mainly something like pushed in there. So you try and wiggle it a bit around, put this tool right there at the end of it. Not sure how much you can see. Wiggle the tool around, pull on them slightly. Don't force anything. They should come out. I had no idea how they look like, and they came out perfect. So this is what we are dealing with. Let me see what type of screw that is. Maybe I'm lucky and it's exactly what I used. Oh, sorry. And yes, let me just rotate this. Yes, it's, or is it? Nah, what I used wiggles a bit, so I need something thicker than this. Okay, so you will use a Torx T20 for them. And yes, a tool like this one that you can have a really low profile here in the corner with is awesome, and I will try to search one online and link one in the description for you if you don't have one obviously already. You might be wondering why I jumped from this thing to that thing. Well, there is a nice way to check if you have the polarity right, because I want to be 100% that I get it right. The ground on that one should be in touch with the ground on that one. So when I find the wires that are directly connected, I know there are grounds on both, so then I know what's negative and what's positive. So yeah, I will better check this for all three speakers and only then start to solder and close them. And it's out. To get it out, oh sorry, I dropped it. You slide it towards the windshield, and then once it's all the way in there, you can get it out like this, and then you have enough room to rotate it where you need it and unplug this connector, which I think has yeah, it has something, a lever like right there that you need to push in order to get it out. I can do it with one hand, so be back. And this is our tweeter, and this time we need to copy its exterior shape, which is different from the center one. I think these are actually bigger than the center one, or anyway, the shape itself is different for sure. We want to reuse this capacitor right here on our speakers that we put in the corners. The center one doesn't have a capacitor, that is used as a full range. I think it gets actually more of a medium frequency in there, but these ones on the corners work as tweeters. So yeah, this factory one's quite weak and crappy, honestly. Anyway, let's get that thing out, copy this, and go from there. Well, a problem. When trusting forums, sometimes they get it wrong. I went with the info that the original speakers in this car, not Bang & Olufsen, just the standard sound system, is a 4 ohm system. Well, at least the tweeters are 8 ohms for sure. And all my speakers are 4 ohms. So I do not think they will damage anything. Actually, I'm 99% sure they will not damage anything, but they will sound louder. So I might need to play with the equalizer a little bit to tone them down. But yeah, so better get this in 8 ohm variant, or wait for this video to be over and see maybe they just output the perfect amount of high and mid. I'm not sure, we will see. But yeah, this is 8 ohm, this is 4 ohm. Also got the driver one out, exactly the same procedure as for the passenger. There is a bit less room in here. We will see how easy we can get the bigger ones in. And for the capacitor that I wanted to reuse on these things, there is a 10 microfarad 50 volts non-polarized capacitor. Well, there's a bit of a problem. Or is it non-polarized? Do we have a line? No, we don't have that, it's just a brand. The problem is, if you change the impedance of the tweeter from 8 to 4 ohms, you also change the crossover point if you keep the same capacitor. So I will use an online crossover calculator and see where the new crossover point will be. If it's too low or too high, I might change the value and not reuse these capacitors. So yeah, the fact that I trusted the forums that this system is a 4 ohm one has failed me. So if you plan to do this, again, wait until I end this video. Maybe it sounds perfect as is and you can continue with 4 ohm speakers, or you might need to buy 8 ohm speakers, so depends on you. And yeah, this one that I put in almost a year ago, I also put it in as a 4 ohm speaker because again, I trusted the forums and nothing bad happened and it worked well. So yeah, don't, these dash speakers will not blow your amp. For the door speakers, if you change from 8 to 4 ohm, that's a bit worse, but this one's only the fact that they changed the crossover point is not that good. Okay, take 2. This turned out way better, experience already. And next, I will mark the holes from this speaker on both of them, drill the holes, attach both speakers, and then get some capacitors from that thing. This will be interesting. Don't know if I remember to tell you, this is 6mm plywood for the tweeters. So in the end I used 6mm for all 3 of them, or actually the other one I think was 7 after I ripped a few of his layers. Anyway, probably 6mm would still work even for the center one. So let's make it black and put those screws in with the speaker. Ta-da! And we are ready to mount capacitors to these two, to this one not required, and solder them in place. I'm not going to use any type of connectors, I want to solder them in place. Yeah, you could use connectors, it's up to you. I prefer solder, I'm not going to touch them to change them or anything, so they are okay. And yeah, if you see something different in this area of this particular speaker, a moron, I'm not going to say who, it was me, poked his finger in there by mistake when I was tightening the screws. Luckily, this is a really good speaker, so it doesn't care that I bent the membrane just a tiny bit in there. Doesn't affect anything, but don't be morons like I was and poke your speakers with your fingers really badly. Anyway, I'm sure nobody will do that, but I do that from time to time. And something else about the impedance of these speakers, I kept thinking, why would people say this is a 4 ohm system when it's 8 ohm? And I realized a lot of people have the middle of the road system. So there are cheapest one that was installed in my car. There is the Audi sound system. So it's basic Audi sound system, middle of the road, and Bang & Olufsen, which is high. So I had this one, which it seems it was 8 ohm actually, and people probably are mostly talking about this one, which might be 4 ohm. And this one, B&O, I think it's 8 ohm from what I understood online. So weirdly enough, the cheapest one and this one have the same speaker impedance. Not the same connectors, but the impedance should be the same, if my logic is correct. So yeah, but because I have the unit, the radio unit in the trunk from this one now, I will link the video where I changed the unit and added the subwoofer and the center speaker and whatnot. My system should also be a 4 ohm. As you know, a 4 ohm system can drive 8 ohm speaker speakers without issues, but the sound will just be a bit lower in volume. So the fact that I kept my original speakers doesn't affect anything. But that also means that I can, when I will upgrade the door speakers, yeah, I will upgrade those at a point in time also, I can put 4-ohm speakers in the doors. And this unit in the trunk will be able to handle them. So yeah, at least that's my logic. And now I will show you what I need to do to the capacitors, what value I need to put so it keeps the intended crossover frequency for this system. Okay, so let's talk about that capacitor. For the moment, you can see here we have 8 ohms, which equals to about 2000 hertz crossover point. If we dropped and the capacitance is 9.95, that's what results from 8 ohm and 2000. Maybe we have 2100. Let's see, calculate capacitance. No, so we have probably a bit lower in reality. Let's see, and 8 ohm, calculate. No, so it's quite close to 2000, but they just used a 10 microfarad capacitor. But if we go down to 4 ohm, let's go down to 4 ohm like we actually did here, you can see we need about 20 microfarads here. So yeah, I cannot use the original ones, because that would mean that my crossover point would actually be at 4000 hertz. You can see it here, so that's way too high in my opinion. I want to keep the original one, and I need this, but I don't have a non-polarized capacitor. But you can create a non-polarized capacitor from 2 polarized capacitors. You simply solder them positive to positive or negative to negative, and then it becomes a non-polarized capacitor, but at half the voltage, the capacitance, not the voltage, sorry about that. So I found 47 microfarads caps and 47, and let's calculate. We are at 23.5. So let's make some adjustments and see what exactly did we change. Probably 1700. So we dropped a bit. Yes. So we dropped a bit in frequency from 2000 to 1700, which is actually quite okay, because these particular speakers are full range speakers. They go from 170 Hz to 20,000 Hz. So they are able to handle this without issues. Yes, we might have a spike at these frequencies, because maybe also the speakers, the woofers in the door are able to handle them. So, but I'm not sure. We will see. Anyway, the woofers in the doors will be changed in the future too, so I will keep that in mind. But yeah, it's quite good. And these caps, the 47 microfarads that I found, are at only 25 volts. The original caps from the tweeters were at 50 volts. So that again would present a problem, but luckily when you put 2 capacitors in series, you halven the voltage on each of them. So my 25 volts in series are able to actually handle 50 volts like the original was able. So in my opinion, this is a perfect swap. So I will solder these capacitors in series, whatnot, and we are good with 4 ohms, and we just changed the frequency a bit, not an extreme amount. So let's get to doing that and see how it goes. Installed 4 capacitors from this damaged board, and you can see them, 2 of them right in here. Focus. 25 volts, 47 microfarads, series on the negative end, positive to positive. So I have the negative 3 here and the positive right in the middle from the speaker, and I will solder right there and right there the wires from the car. But now I will put some glue on these capacitors so they remain properly in place. I don't want them moving around while I don't know, hitting a pothole or something. But yeah, looking good. As I said that I'm soldering, I need to remove this particular connector, so it kind of opens up in half. Maybe you can get an idea. This half was on top of it. It's really weird for me to show you, and it slid out like this. I simply put a knife between them and started wiggling out, and half of it came out, and now I need to push on those metal springs to get the wires themselves out. Okay, I did some measurements. On the passenger side, the wire with red on it is the positive, and the wire with brown and yellow is the negative. And as for the middle, I don't have your colors because these are custom wires. I've put them in here, so red is positive, blue is negative. But for you, I simply measured between these two wires and the connector in the trunk. That was my only way of figuring out what is what. And yes, weirdly enough, speakers in the doors are 4 ohm. So why do I have or had 8 ohm tweeters? Nobody knows that. So this is a 4 ohm system. I added a 4 ohm woofer. Everything is okay. Now I will also have 4 ohm tweeters. Why they were originally 8 ohm? Once again, that's extremely weird. So I unplugged again the connector from the unit in the trunk when I solder it, so I can't short anything on it or destroy it in any way. So let me solder now. When you are soldering on your dash, put some protection. The last thing that you want is drops of something on your dash damaging it. Okay, wires are soldered, heat shrinked in place, and all that remains is to lower this speaker and tighten the 2 screws. And the rest I think I will continue tomorrow. Okay, so the first little guy is working perfectly. I'm going to just show it to you moving its little membrane, but the sound will be lowered a lot. Maybe you can even see it now moving a tiny bit. You might be thinking, how am I going to get this speaker in here? Because no matter what you try, it just will not drop in the hole. It's too big. Well, there is a method to this madness. You simply slide it in like this, and now you can slowly begin to rotate it, and now you are in the correct position. Obviously you need to connect the wires before doing this, so I will connect them now and then slide it in there for the last time. The wires are soldered. The negative is going through the caps into the negative terminal, and the positive is directly connected. So let's pull the heat shrink onto them and go from there. Okay, heat shrinked in place. Ignore the red color. That's only because I had red heat shrink on that size. This is the positive, the big one. And yeah, next I can drop this in place and hope for the best. Okay, so first one is in, but I didn't cut it perfectly around the wood. As you can see here, it's a bit bigger, and that was getting caught in this right here. Once it's in, zero problems, but to put it in, I needed to push on this a lot. It was not nice, so try to cut it a bit closer to the speaker itself. And the rest is perfect, and now I'm going to put some screws in here. And yeah, we are looking to the windshield from the outside. Okay, this one is also in. Tested the system, it's working perfectly, and yes, 4 ohm was the way to go. It sounds really good. I think with 8 ohm the volume would be a bit lower. Probably these particular speakers are a bit less efficient compared to the original tweeters. Much better in sound reproduction, but a bit less efficient. So 4 ohm is the way to go probably for any system in this car. Okay, and you can see down deep in there, it's perfectly at the limit with this 6mm plywood, so don't use anything thicker or you will not be able to get it in there. If you have something like 5mm, I think that's probably a bit safer. So let's get to the driver's side. Okay, so for the driver's side, the positive is this red one right here. And yeah, I'm not going to show the whole process once again, it's identical with the other side. Stupid phone, why are you continuing to focus? So yeah, clean the wires, solder, heat shrink, put it in here, tighten the screws and hope for the best. If you think the passenger side was a pain, this is even worse. You kind of have to put it somehow face down, then one of these longer sides needs to go in that hole and start rotating it until it goes under this. And yeah, put some longer wires onto it. Me using the car's harness made things even worse because the wires were really short, but yeah, it's there. Not pushed all the way in, but it's there. And yeah, I'm going to give it a quick test, make sure everything is working, and then put the covers back on. You know, it's never easy when doing something like this. This one is barely outputting sound. So, I don't know, I think one of the capacitors that I used, they are not new, they are from old boards. I think one of them is actually bad, so almost nothing gets through it. So yeah, I need to take everything out, recheck everything and put it back together once I know what's happening and I fix it. But I'm not going to take you through this whole process. It's everything in reverse and it will take a lot of time and be really annoying for me, but yeah, it is what it is. After a bit of digging around, figured out this first capacitor is actually bad. If I contact here and here, it's working perfectly. If I also include this one, almost no sound. So yeah, it's good to reuse components. It's bad that you can have troubles like this. So be back when everything is done. And finally, all three of them working perfectly. And again, it's raining outside. What a beautiful day. But yeah, now I'm going to start and simply put back the grills, the covers. That's about it. And then I will give you the final test with these things. To put the grills back, you simply slide the lower part and then push it towards the windshield in that direction, and it will clip in place. It only has two clips, although there is one in the middle that doesn't have something to hook onto, so only two at the ends. If you hear two clips, you are done, and then simply push this thing down, and that's about it. Let's go to the other side. Then yeah, I need to clean a bit the area where I worked, obviously. Second cover is back in, and only one remains to clip back. All that remains is to put this thing back in place. As you can see, I glued that broken clip once again, but if you have broken clips like I do, round these things as much as possible so they go in easily, and yeah, be very careful when pushing it in. Try to push it as even as possible all around so you don't break again something. And it's done. And I just wanted to explain how I feel this thing is working now. So the highs are much more crisp compared to what they were before, and much more exact. When I start to crank up the volume, these things stay crisp, but the tweeters from the back doors, somewhere around there or where they are, they fall apart. So yeah, you can hear the difference. So basically in this sound system at this point the weak links have become the door speakers and the back tweeters. Front tweeters awesome, subwoofer that I added awesome. Yeah, do this upgrade, it's worth it. It's not really easy, but neither is it extremely difficult. And yeah, am I happy I did it? For sure. Will I probably now change also those speakers because I realized that they are now the weak link? Yeah, for sure in the future. So this has been it for this video. Hopefully it helps you, in which case please give it a like, check out my other videos, and as always, see you in the next one. Bye.